Hello. Hey, Dr. Brown, how are you?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, thank you so much for your willingness to help us with our finance class at the University of West Georgia. If you don't mind, could you start by sharing your name and position and just briefly your professional work history?
Sure. I'm Philip Brown. I'm in my fifth year as the superintendent in Jackson County. Prior to that, I was 11 years as a high school principal at North Oconee High School, 2 years as a middle school principal at Oconee Middle, served 1 year as the assistant principal at Oconee Middle. And prior to that, I was a middle school math and science teacher. I taught in Oconee County, and I taught in Eccles County down in South Georgia, and I taught in Camden County. Went up the ranks through as a teacher, and then into admin, and then to the seat that I get the opportunity to sit in now.
Well, thank you. And wanted them to hear that because I wanted them to know that how qualified you are for this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for students to hear from a sitting superintendent because
Sure.
you obviously deal with these realities every single day. But for our students who may not be aware, can you describe millage rate, kind of what that is and kind of what that looks like in your system?
Sure. So every school district levies taxes with their board. And since our board levies taxes, we're responsible for setting a millage rate every year. And that determines what people are going to pay on their property taxes for your community. And so the homeowners in the community, the industry in the community, the commercial property in the community, all of those individuals and corporations have a stake at which you set your millage rate. In Georgia, you can set it up to 20 mills. I think you can actually go over that if you have some kind of, major issue, and you probably have to get your state representatives involved to be able to do that. But you can set it up to 20 mills. It's pretty political, I would say. And depending on what community you're in, having a historical perspective of your community's millage rate is really, really important. And so what happens is the property assessor assesses all the properties in the county. Sometimes they do that annually. Sometimes they reassess every few years. And depending on what that assessment schedule is, every year, every property in the county, that homeowner or that corporation, they're going to receive a property tax assessment. And it's going to assess what the value of that property is. And then as a school district, you're going to do your budget, and then you're going to work with your board to set a millage rate to determine how many mills you're going to charge on the value of those properties. The tax commissioner is going to use that information to be able to determine how much money you're going to collect off of each one of those properties. So it's important to understand what a tax digest is and how that works, and then being able to set that millage rate based on that total tax digest for your county, understanding what exemptions are out there, depending on if you have some type of senior exemption, some type of abatement that's been set in place. If you're a county that where they're attempting to attract businesses, you may have Chamber of Commerce influence, and certain corporations may pay pilot payments, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. And so it just depends on where you're at, but you work with your school board to set a millage rate, and based on what you set that millage rate is, determines how much people pay in property taxes.
Perfect.
A real quick story about that hit me early on as a superintendent. The properties inside of our community had not been reassessed for a long, lengthy period of time. And the state does something called a sales tax ratio, in which they look at the sales inside of the community to determine if your assessments are close in value to the assessments that your tax assessor is completing. And so for a number of years, we had values rising exponentially year over year, but we had the same assessments. And so the tax assessor made a determination that he was going to reassess all of the properties in 1 year. And are we frozen here? We good?
I can hear you.
Okay,
there we go. We're good.
And so the property tax assessor reassessed all the properties, to the tune of 40+% of values were raised in that year. We ended up lowering the millage rate over close to $1.5 million. But with that still happening, year over year, we were up 28% in property taxes that were collected inside of our community. So even lowering the millage rate, the values had went up so much that it didn't matter. People were still hollering us about their property taxes and how much they were contributing to the schools. So that's a little bit of a story that is a real-time story, and we work with our board to try to figure out what that millage rate needed to be for that year.
But definitely, I know you would share, and you kind of talked about this. It certainly can be a political process. Can you explain basically, and I'm old enough to remember when this was put into place as a superintendent, but where it's, even if you don't roll back and you just go with the higher assessed amount, that it's still, you have to advertise it as a tax increase. Can you kind of explain that for our students?
Sure. So every year when you receive your digest, your CFO, your assistant superintendent for finance, maybe in a small district, your superintendent gets with the tax commissioner, and you work with that tax commissioner based on what the digest looks like, and it calculates a rollback rate, which means that you collect the same amount of taxes that you did the previous year, not including growth. So if you're like in our situation right now, we're the fourth fastest growing county in the country. And so we're going to have a tremendous amount of growth inside of our digest just off of new properties and new builds and new commercial growth, those kind of things. And so that rollback rate is, if you don't go all the way back to that rollback rate, let's say that you have a current rate of 18 and the rollback rate is 17.5. Let's say that you still go from 18 to 17.75. If you don't go all the way to the 17.5, that is considered a tax increase. And anytime you do a tax increase, you have to have 3 millage rate hearings. And so the community has the opportunity to come in and provide you with feedback about their taxes going up and what they think about that, and what they think about you're doing with the budget and what you're doing with the money. So, and depending on different times and different political situations, right now, inside of our state and outside of our state, property taxes are something that's constantly being talked about from a legislative standpoint. And so we have to be cognizant of that and pay attention to it, and work with our board. And I work at the pleasure of the board. And so I have some board members that their number one issue is the millage rate. And they're fine with leaving it the same, some of them, and dealing with the hearings. I have other ones that want to do the rollback rate. I have some that they're fine with leaving it the same, but I better not ever ask them to raise that millage rate. And so understanding all that, I think you're in a political position as a superintendent in whatever community and district you work in. That superintendent's working with that board all the time to try to figure out what the best case scenario is for the school district.
And you mentioned sales ratio. Do you guys get equalization?
We do not get equalization.
Okay, I figured you didn't. Okay. Obviously, because the way they define your wealth would not put you in that threshold. Okay. All right. That's what I was wanting to make sure. The populace, the people, inevitably, I would get questions about raising people's property tax. And you kind of alluded to this, but I just want to reemphasize it. Do school systems, are they actually the ones that raise the assessments on people?
No, the property tax assessor is the one that assigns the values to the property. And so that's what happens sometimes. Like if you leave the millage rate the same and the property tax assessor has assessed the values higher for that particular year, then when people see their values go up, they also see their property taxes go up. And their message to us is, well, you raised our property taxes.
Yeah. And then they don't necessarily always understand that a school system, or at least your situation is a little different. I was in a smaller system, but do you guys make up the biggest portion of the total tax locally? In other words, is the school system the biggest recipient in terms of dollars?
Yeah, no question. And in most communities, that's going to be the case. The school district is going to collect more property taxes than the county government, maybe cities and city councils, fire districts, those kind of things. School districts are usually the number one contributor to property taxes, which is going to be something you're going to hear about as an educational leader. I mean, that people are going to say like, okay. And there's a balance, right? I mean, let's just be honest. Like, we're in a very competitive market when it comes to hiring educators, and so your salary schedule is really important. And you want to be able to pay people more than you're paying them. But if 85 to 90% of your budget is nothing but personnel, anytime you raise salaries, and many things are based on percentages, right? So let's take TRS, for example, is a percentage of salary. So if you raise salaries, the amount of money that you're paying into TRS is going up for the educator or for the employer portion of TRS. And so I think you have to be really savvy when it comes to working to increase salaries, to build schools, all of those things. You have to be very strategic. So we're in FY27 right now. We just started on July 1. I am working on the FY28 budget as we speak. So I'm a year. We just finished this budget and going through all the budget hearings, but I'm already to next year to try to figure out how do we increase salaries. And we're opening 2 schools in August of 27. So I have to figure out, all right, how are we going to pay for that? But how are we also working on the salary portion? And a lot of that goes back to how can we generate revenue? I mean, we can generate it 2 ways, right? We're going to generate it through QBE and increases in enrollment, and we can generate it through property taxes. So we have to pay attention to those things.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you guys utilize the EDLE for some of your construction, but as we know, it doesn't always fund everything.
Yes, we do. So little story. When I got here, we were collecting right about $1 million every month in EDLE. And one thing that I would ask every educator in every district is to have an idea of what you collect per month. So I talk about it with our principals. I talk about it with our district office leaders. And so when I got here, we collected about $1 million a month, and it's $12 million a year. Right now, to build an elementary school, to build, 1,000 student elementary school, you're going to spend $40 million. So you're going to save every penny in your community. Like in our situation, you're going to save every penny for 4 years to be able to build that school and pay for it in cash. So knowing all that and understanding it, I think sitting in this chair, there's a business sense that you have to bring with yourself to the job. I'm all about teaching and learning, but at the end of the day, I'm, the second largest employer in our community. And I'm responsible for a lot of things, and we have to pay attention to the dollars.
Yeah, and I know I'm deviating a little bit, but so does your board, or maybe you guys don't have to, but do you incur any bond indebtedness for your building program? Most schools do, obviously.
We do. So 2 years ago, our ESPLOS was up for renewal. Interesting part about our school system. Inside of our county, we have 3 different school districts. So we have Jefferson City, Commerce, and us. And since we're the largest, we collect the largest percentage, but we also get to determine when that vote is going to be. And so we made a determination that it was time to go ahead and vote on the next ESPLOS. You really want to give yourself a year from the time that you vote until you start collecting on the next ESPLOS, just in case it fails. You want to have some buffer there. And so we had that pass, but at the same time we did the ESPLOS, we also did a $200 million bond for new school construction. So I'm in my 5th year, as I mentioned. I've opened a new middle school my first year. My second year, we built a new elementary school. And right now we have 3 new schools, high school and elementary, that open in August of 27, and a middle that opens in August of 28. And so we use some of that bond money. We actually have a bond millage inside of our county school district. And so we have the regular millage rate for school tax, and then we have a bond millage rate. And that bond millage rate we actually set. We don't have to have any hearings. But because that $200 million bond was passed, we can determine what that millage rate is and collect money for that to help pay off the bond. We also use some of our ESPLOS monies to help pay off that bond as well. So we combine those two pockets of money to pay that off.
So have you guys ever talked about how many cycles of SPLOST are going beyond one cycle of SPLOST to pay back a bond? Or does the board have a position on how far out they're willing to go?
Yes. So since we have a bond millage, this $200 million we're bonded out in probably 10 or 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the board was comfortable with that. They were just comfortable with the numbers. So in my 5 years, we built that elementary and that middle when we paid cash for them, which was huge. So we used capital outlay money and also used our ESPLOS money and just tracked it. For my first 36 months here, we did not have, from month to month, we did not have any money in our SPLOS balance. We zeroed it out every month to be able to build those two schools just because we were growing so fast. And I had to make sure the board was comfortable with that to understand what strategy we were using long-term, because we're not just looking at, like I mentioned a second ago, we're not just looking at FY27. I'm trying to figure out 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what's Jackson County look like? Right now, we've got about, we're approaching 12,000 kids. But I'm guessing in the next 20 years, we'll hit 20,000 kids. And so what does that look like from a systems approach? And how do I, for the next superintendent and the next board, how do I put them in the best position to be successful for this community? And paying attention to the building funds, paying attention to debt, making sure that I have a very good grasp on debt and paying off stuff as we have the opportunity to. It is huge. Anytime we pay off a new school or pay off a school, we publicize that as a community. We think that's a big deal to be able to share that information. So I mentioned we paid those two schools off that we built. We also paid off 3 schools. We paid off the bond for 3 schools. We advertised that to the community that we had paid those schools off. So they know, look, this guy's been here 5 years. He paid off 5 schools. And it helps people trust in what you're trying to do financially. Yeah.
And as you alluded to, the public, when it comes to local, especially right now, property taxes, building that trust is obviously very, very important. So budget reserves, is there I don't know if you look at a percentage of what you're comfortable with, what the board is comfortable with, or what you try to strike? And I know that can vary depending on the economic situation and QBE allotment, but can you kind of just address that a little bit?
Sure. I think there's a lot of factors involved in your fund reserve. Like, when does your tax commissioner send out bills? So when are you going to receive property tax money? A couple of years ago, our tax commissioner did not send out the bills, didn't make those due almost till the first of the year. Wow. And so if you think about it, if you received the last ones, you don't have any money coming in. So when people see a big fund balance at the end of the fiscal year on June 30th, they think you just have all that money in the bank. And you have all that money in the bank so that you can survive until you get property tax money. And then you get a significant increase. And so then it shows a lot of money in the account, but you got to think, I got to make it how many months to the next opportunity to get property taxes. For us, it depends on, when it comes to fund reserves, it really depends on what we have planned. And I'll give you an example of that. So we were growing so fast. We were going 700 kids a year my first few years. So to be able to build that new elementary school, I told our board that we were going to have to use general fund money out of our fund balance to be able to finish paying for that. And so we went down $10 million in fund balance in 1 year.
Wow.
So and at the time we had about right at $30 million. We went down to 19 million. And that was at the end of 2024. And I told them the next couple of years, I'm going to build up the fund balance with opening these new schools So you just have to trust, and we'll look at it monthly, and we'll make sure that we do a good job budgeting, and we'll get very efficient and very lean personnel wise, and just paying attention to bus routes and what we're buying and what we're not buying, what computer programs we're using inside of our schools, those sorts of things, to be able to cut the budget as much as we can. So FY25, we saved $11 million. And for FY26, we saved $10 million. So that fund balance went from 19 million to 40 million. So as of June 30th, we're sitting on $40 million. My goal is to get to 45, 46 by the end of FY27. That way we'll have enough in our fund reserve. So when we open these new schools, we will not have to go back and raise any kind of millage rate, which is really important. So politically, we're showing the community that not only we're saving money, but we're preparing to open these schools and not impacting your millage rate. And I'm a real big believer in not yo-yoing the millage. And what I mean by that is just making it go up and down, up and down, up and down. I think consistency is very important, and it builds trust with your community. A couple other things I'll say, and I didn't mention this when we were talking about eSplost. I know the rules are very regulated in what you can say and what you can't say, and how much.
Yeah, I meant to ask you that.
You can be pro, and you got to be careful about that. Number one is determining when you're going to have that vote, and being smart to understand that if you're going to do it in a presidential election year, in that November, you're going to have a huge turnout. Some people are comfortable with that. Some people are going to try to do it on a date where they feel like the turnout's low. You're going to do it on a year there's the governor's election. We did ours in March. We anticipated a significantly low turnout. So with that being said, it was really important to educate our staff as a voting block on what this was being used for and why we were making the determination to pass this eSplost at this time. The second big thing is you have to pay attention to who votes in your community. So for us, we have 3 very, very large senior living housing communities.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I did 35 presentations. I did 4 HOA meetings at one senior living facility.
Oh, wow.
And it was just to educate them and talk to them and build some relationships. And many of the people inside that senior living community were retired educators from all across the state. And so they understood eSplost, but just getting them to buy into what we're doing. And they all went and voted. And there were more vote yes eSplost signs in that community than anywhere else. We also had to pay attention to the private school communities around us, and charter schools. If you're in a district where there's a lot of charter schools, that they may push back against the eSplost vote, or if you have a lot of homeschool kids inside your community, you can face pushback in some of those areas. So we were successful. We passed it at a record rate, which we were excited about. But there were a lot of people working behind the scenes to make sure, parents included, and community members that got involved that helped make that happen.
And did y'all, because you share the SPLOST, right? So did you guys, I know those are all 3 very strong school systems. Did you share any kind of message or collaboratively plan, or did you kind of all just craft your own message for your audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So we're all in 3 different situations from a growth standpoint. And we're growing right now at an exponential rate compared to. And so we all had different projects that we were working on as a school district. But we collaborated on it. We had conversations, and we actually partnered with our chamber. They helped us on it. They did some messaging for us. They did some graphics to make sure that we got the message out. And that's the key, is being able to communicate. People want to know what you're going to do. And a lot of people want to know, what are you going to do for my child's particular school, right? And that's the thing, is like, they want to know what you're going to do for theirs. And so we're building new facilities, but at the same time, you better be touching those other schools as well.
Sure.
And there's some things that I hate to say it, that aren't very sexy when it comes to projects that are necessary capital projects, that are necessary maintenance.
Heating and air, roofing.
Yeah. People are like, you spent what on a roof?
Yeah.
But they're going to say that until it rains and it leaks.
That's right.
And then they're good with it. So I think being out in front, having a strong team around you is so important in these situations.
Absolutely. Well, one final question, if you don't mind, or if you
Sure.
think of something else. So if I'm a school leader and, I aspire to be a school superintendent, and knowing that, as you talked about, the financial understanding of what you're dealing with specific to your community, but in general, obviously we know, that's so important. That's an easy way to get fired if you don't. We know that. It's very important when you're dealing with funds, public funds. But what would you encourage in terms of learning if someone aspires and they're wanting to sit in a superintendent interview one day and they want to be well versed in school finances and they don't have the benefit of being a superintendent yet?
Sure.
Is there a path, or what helped prepare you for that?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that really, really helped me over the years. When I was in Oconee, they made all of the principals go to all the board meetings. So for 13 years, I went to every board meeting. And there were nights that, you got 50,000 things going on at your school and you're trying to figure it out. And I would have to go to the board meeting. But sitting in those board meetings, I learned not what was happening behind the scenes, maybe with the superintendent and the board, but I got to see how they were presenting things in public to be able to work with the board, to get the hands raised, to be able to get the money, to be able to get the things done that they needed to get done. So attending board meetings, I think, is a huge piece. And then in each board meeting, they're going to present some kind of financial data. I would go back to my office and I would print that information out and I would look at it and I would review it and I'd put it in a folder. And the next time I went to the next board meeting, I would look at that data and I would track it and I would compare it to the last month to get an ebb and flow of find out how school finance works.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is so important that some superintendents struggle with a little bit is understanding the allotment sheet. So going on the DOE finance page, printing out your school district's allotment sheet, finding out how many assistant superintendents you get in that QB allotment sheet, how many assistant principals do you get on the allotment sheet compared to how many assistant principals do you have in your district. Thinking about how many secretaries, how many accountants. Understanding that QB sheet is very important to being able to understand because where a lot of people mess up is they overhire.
Yes.
So let's take when we went through COVID, we got ESSER funds. Some superintendents made the decision they're going to spend their ESSER funds on people. The ESSER funds run out, and what do they have?
Yeah.
They still have the person employed, and so then the local property tax is now picking up that person's salary, their TRS, their state health, all of the benefits that go there. And then the budget starts becoming inflated and they start eating into their fund balance, and then they've got to cut people and they got to figure out ways to cut the budget. So paying attention to that. Another thing that along those lines with QB that I think is so important to pay attention to is, what does it cost your district to hire a teacher? So for us right now, we budget about $115,000 on average to hire a teacher. State health is a significant cost.
Right.
TRS is a cost. And so knowing that, okay, everybody sees the salary schedule and this teacher makes $60,000, but they don't think about the state health cost, and they don't think about the TRS cost. They don't think about the insurance cost, all the other things that come into play there. So have a question for your CFO of like, hey, this year, what did we budget for a teacher? And that'll give you a good idea of like when you're trying to build a budget and how you communicate with the public. I stand up in front of our Rotaries and our Civitans and I tell them, what do you think we budget for a teacher right now? And many of them are astounded when I share that number. Because they just haven't calculated all the other ancillary costs that come along with the benefits package. At the same time, like I think it's important for us to communicate it to our staff so they know the investment that's being made into them, because sometimes all they see is their salaries schedule where they fall in that amount. They don't actually know all the other things that are included in that amount.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dr. Brown, I really appreciate, I know it's the beginning of school and it's a busy time, but I think this is going to be very informative for our students. And thank you for
Thank
your
you so
service to education.
Well, I thank you for yours too, and appreciate you training up the next group of leaders. And thank you for all you do for West Georgia.
Thank you.